Did you know that it's estimated that over 53 million Americans are providing unpaid care to a family member or a friend? These dedicated individuals often juggle their career and caregiving responsibilities with personal commitments and their own health needs. However, the emotional, physical, and mental toll that can lead to caregiver burnout is real, and it's also a state of chronic stress and exhaustion that can have serious implications for both the caregiver and the person receiving care. Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Miegel, and welcome to My Care Advisors. In this episode, Tips to Avoid Caregiver Burnout, we are joined by Heather Ashby. She's a certified senior advisor and owner of Care Patrol of Vancouver. Listen in as we explore how assisted living and other senior care options can be a wonderful choice for older adults, and most importantly, the resources that are needed to avoid caregiver burnout. Well, welcome, Heather. It's such a pleasure to have you join our listeners today.
Thank you for having me, Cheryl. I am happy to be able to share this important information with our listeners.
So, Heather, let's start a conversation by what actually is meant by caregiver burnout, and most importantly, how does being part of that sandwich generation amplify the impact on so many caregivers?
Cheryl, that is such an important question. Caregiver burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, and it happens when you're taking care of someone else. Stressed caregivers may experience fatigue, anxiety, and depression. The sandwich generation is made up of baby boomers and Gen Xers. They find themselves simultaneously taking care of aging parents and growing children, so they are sandwiched in the middle. Boomers are from 1946 to 1964. 33% of the baby boomers have a senior parent and a dependent child. And the Gen Xers are from 1965 to 1980, and 42% of them have a senior parent and a dependent child. Studies from the Sage Journal have characterized the sandwich generation of caregivers differently from other caregivers with children. Also reported from the Change Bridge Medical Associates, they are also seeing more triple-decker or double-decker sandwiched individuals. This involves people in their 60s that are helping to care for their grandchildren, which allows their adult children to work as well as supporting their own parents who are usually in their 90s.
Wow, Heather, that is so interesting, this whole sandwich generation and thinking about the double-decker and triple-decker. Thank you for sharing that, because I am sure there's so many people that are in this type of situation every day. So turning to some of those early signs and symptoms of caregiver burnout, what are they and why is it important to recognize them so early?
Well, caregiver burnout is very common. Studies show that more than 60% of caregivers experience burnout. Some of the signs of the caregiver burnout are similar to fatigue and caregiver stress. However, there are serious symptoms and specifically suggest that you're burned out. The physical symptoms that you may experience are rapid change in weight or appetite, body aches, migraines, or persistent headaches. Some get sick more often and or are sick for longer. They experience exhaustion and they can't shake it regardless of how much sleep they get. Some emotional symptoms are feeling hopeless, like their stress will never end, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. Some isolate themselves or have a feeling of low self-esteem and worthlessness. Everyone's experience with burnout is different. Caregiver burnout may cause some of additional feelings with anxiety or fear. If you do something wrong, it will harm someone within your care. You may feel anger or frustration if the person within your care doesn't accept it, want it, or appreciate the care you're providing. They could feel denial of the severity of the person's condition that you're caring for. Oh, it's just not that bad. There's guilt. Spending time taking care of yourself is less important than the person within your care. You might feel bad doing things to care for yourself because it benefits you and not others. Negativity. Your caregiving journey started off on a positive note, but now it feels like there might be a dark cloud following you. Feelings towards responsibilities are passive, or you don't have the same desire to do the job well. And I've actually experienced some of those own thoughts on my end. When I was a caregiver for my dad, I had thoughts that, oh, this might be my dad's last days. I shouldn't feel this way. That is a lot to carry. You can also feel secluded or alone. People can feel like they don't have support. Either nobody wants to help them, or asking for help is a sign of weakness. It is important to recognize caregiver burnout because it can affect your ability to care for yourself and the person you're caring for. And the caregiver burnout can also lead to physical and mental health conditions.
Heather, thank you so much for sharing all of these symptoms, both physical and also just emotional symptoms, and also a little about your story too. It's so important, as you mentioned, to just recognize this is what can be normal for people experiencing burnout. So I'm just curious, what have you found some practical steps that caregivers can really take to help prevent burnout and also maintain their own well-being?
The irony of caregiving is that sometimes the person giving so much to others, they frequently forget to give to themselves the same treatment. A caregiver should take a few minutes of alone time each day to plan, and then at each night to reflect their day and ask themselves some questions. Am I getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Did I eat 3 meals today? Did I drink 8 glasses of water? Did I exercise today? Did I spend time on activities that I enjoy doing? And did I spend time with someone other than the person I'm caring for? These are really good questions to ask, and it shows what your own self-care looks like.
You're so right. Well, I was also wondering, to piggyback on that, can you share some really care strategies or even activities that caregivers can incorporate into their own routine just to reduce their stress and anxiety?
Yes, there are many things that caregivers can do to reduce their risk of burnout. An important one is to participate in respite care. This is an overnight care that a loved one can stay at for a long weekend, a week, or up to a month. They can also join a support group or talk with a mental health professional. Some other ideas to reduce stress is to rally your community for support. Find the services out there to help support you. There are state and local caregiver support groups that are available. Check in with yourself every day. Get an understanding of how you're feeling each day, and recognizing that those feelings may differ from day to day, and that is okay. Give yourself some appreciation. Stop and think about how wonderful you are and what you are doing for the care of someone else. Like, you are making a difference in their lives. Sometimes we just forget that. And then practice forgiveness and gratitude. Caregiving can be a thankless job sometimes, trying to remember the things to be grateful for and to forgive ourselves when we do get upset. Learn to accept help from others, and better to ask for help. It is okay to ask for help. Cultivate hobbies as an outlet of stress. Do something to enjoy, that you enjoy, even if it's little or a few minutes a day. Find what works for you as a stress reducer. This could be anything from putting together a puzzle, doing beadwork, art, cooking, gardening. Baking can be something that feels good to you. Minimize decisions. Be consistent. Consistency is important for the person you're caring for. You don't need to make changes. Keep it simple. Keep it the same. Routine is good for you and your loved one that you're caring for. And talk to a professional therapist, or do join a support group. Don't underestimate the help of a therapist or a support group. You can share with other people who are going through the exact same things that you are.
Those are such wonderful tips and thoughts. I was wondering also, because of your certified senior advisor background, I'm sure that you must encounter so many experiencing caregiver burnout. So just sharing these practical strategies to really avoid it are so important. So thank you, Heather, for sharing those. I was wondering, what considerations should family caregivers keep in mind when supporting older adults or a family member to ensure both their well-being and that the care that they're receiving is appropriate?
Respecting the rights of the care recipient and making sure his or her voice is primary, good communication, and finding the balance between the care recipient's needs and the preferences and the caregiver's ability to meet those needs. Those will constitute a well-being of both parties. What that really means is making sure the care receiver is heard and well cared for, as well as the caregiver has the ability to meet his or her physical needs as well as emotional needs. Sometimes caregivers give care for their loved one even when they're exhausted. They may do this out of obligation or financial necessity. Caregiving is hard and can drain a caregiver and deplete his or her own health. I have seen this happen so many times. One spouse will care for the other even when their own health is in jeopardy.
So, Heather, what resources or services, I know you mentioned a few previously, that are available for caregivers, and how can they access these to help manage their responsibilities?
There are so many resources for help and support. I would suggest Googling caregiver support group or resources for the caregiver support group. There are state support groups from DSHS, which is the Department of Social and Human Services here locally. Hope for the Alzheimer's Support Group, which is also another local group. The Alzheimer's Association has local groups wherever you are. There are caregiver online support groups. The Well Spouse Association has resources, AARP, and Working Daughters, just to name some of them. Many memory care communities are doing respite care and assisted living if you need it, but they have respite care, which is the overnight care, and they also, some of them will offer adult daycare, which is during the day. There are local adult daycare programs. Some are private pay and some are state funded.
So it really sounds like you don't have to do your caregiving journey by yourself. You need support, there's resources, and there's a number of people within their local communities that can help rally around. They just need to reach out. Is that right?
Yes, there are support services and they just have to reach out. And I definitely suggest finding what's out there, meeting their individual needs, and then reaching out.
Yeah. And also, Heather, as a certified senior advisor, I'm just curious, how do you help support family caregivers and older adults through their aging journey?
We find out what their needs are. We offer solutions with in-home care if they need that. If they need something else as far as either the respite care, or if it's time and they are looking for maybe some help with assisted living, memory care, or even some independent living. But you don't have to be a caregiver and burning yourself out. For some reasons, it's the generations of my parents that have worked so hard and they feel like it's their job to care for their loved one, which I appreciate and respect, but it's very important to recognize at what cost and what risk for health. I've seen so many caregivers literally care themselves to where it's been detrimental to their health. And then an adult child has two parents that need care and assistance versus the one.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for what you do every day as a certified senior advisor and helping so many families and older adults find the appropriate care and to give them respite, and to also be that sounding board for those resources and being such a great resource for them. So thank you so much. Can you please share with our listeners any additional thoughts that you may have?
Yes, Cheryl, I would like to share that I also have been a primary caregiver for my dad. He was in the hospital for about 2 weeks and they sent him home on hospice. He came to my home. I took a leave of absence from my job and decided to care for him. I, being in the industry, I knew what hospice traditionally meant, but I also have seen many people get better and graduate from the hospice care, and that gave me hope that he could maybe get better. I was the primary caregiver. My 2 sisters would come over on their scheduled visits, and they would help as they could. But I also know too well the restless thoughts throughout the day, the tasks that are challenging, that I knew what I had to do to make things right for my dad. And don't get me wrong, it was a privilege to care for my dad at end of life, and I would do it again. I just wish I would have known more about caregiver burnout back then. I wish I would have known that it was real, the signs and the symptoms, and mostly, I wish I would have known that it's okay to speak up and ask for help. I would have asked for more help from my sisters. I would have reached out to a support group, and I would have known and understood what self-care meant and what it looked like for me. You don't have to go alone. Be good to yourself and find your self-care. It's important.
Well, thank you, Heather, for sharing this personal story. And I know that you have to have reached so many of our listeners today with similar ways that they're going through caregiver burnout and just in the care for a family member. So thank you for sharing that with us. And most importantly, thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you again, Heather, for sharing this important information with our listeners today and providing such insightful information. Listeners, to view resources, show notes, and access more My Care Advisors episodes, visit mycareadvisors.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app. And leave you with this thought: you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. Fill yourself up. Choose to be inspired to live the best life every day. Thank you for listening. We are grateful to be your guide.